If you're burned out and you're blaming medicine, I want to give you a different way to think about it. And what I'm about to tell you might even help you stay in your job longer, maybe even love it again. I get it. I know what it's like. I was actually working more than full-time as a hospitalist because I was picking up extra shifts on top of my usual week-on, week-off schedule. Just like you, I was spending more time in the EMR than I was with my patients, doing paperwork instead of what I was trained to do. And I remember missing the weekend get-togethers, the trips I couldn't go on because I was working, thinking to myself, is this what I signed up for? I really thought it was going to be different. And when you feel that way, you're probably going to blame medicine or the system, just like I did. That's just what happens. Things didn't turn out the way you thought it was going to, and medicine is the most obvious thing to point at. But I want to throw out a different idea for you to consider. What if the problem wasn't medicine? What if it was simply because you're dependent on it? Because when you're relying on it completely, when you feel like you have no options, like you can't change anything, of course that's going to lead to burnout. So maybe the solution isn't to try to fix medicine. And maybe it's not to quit medicine either. Maybe the solution is to break the financial dependency, to get to a place where your job feels optional. And that's really what I want to talk about in this video, creating options and flexibility in your life. Before I get into the how, I want to say something I think needs to be said. I think the stakes here are pretty high because burnout is probably more prevalent than most people realize. I think a lot of it is hidden. Most of us don't really know what's going on inside our colleagues. You walk by them in the hall, you smile, you say hi, and you have no idea. And every once in a while, something surfaces that reminds you of that. In my own hospitalist group, I lost a colleague to suicide. This wasn't somebody I just passed in the hallway. This was somebody I worked side by side with for years. And one day, she was gone. And I had no idea. I literally had no idea what was going on inside. And that's coming from somebody who prides himself on going deeper. When I was in the team room, I'd have those conversations, actually asking people how they were doing, trying to find out what was really going on. And despite that, I had no idea. Now, I'm not going to say I know everything that was going on with her, but one thing I do know is that part of the story I heard was that she felt like she didn't have any other options, no way out of her situation. She felt trapped. And I know that played a part in her suicide. So when we talk about burnout, I think we have to be honest about what's actually at stake and why just telling doctors to take a vacation or download a meditation app isn't going to cut it. Let's talk about this financial dependency issue because I think it might actually be a better solution to the burnout problem than anything else I've seen. Look, I'm not saying medicine doesn't have problems. It does. But think about it. Is fixing the system something that's going to happen in our lifetime? Is anything we do on that front really going to move the needle for you right now? You and I know it's a huge uphill battle. And yet that's where so much of the energy goes. Trying to fix medicine, or on the other end, just putting a Band-Aid on burnout. Meditation apps, resilience training, wellness initiatives. We're treating the signs and symptoms of burnout instead of the actual problem. So what if we tried to solve it a different way? Because I think the real problem for a lot of burned out doctors is financial dependency. And what that really means is simple. You don't feel like you have any options. You don't feel like you can walk away from medicine and do something else. You feel trapped. And I get that. I remember coming out of training way later than most of my friends who started working right after college. They had years of saving and investing ahead of me. I had student loans that weighed on me. I'm sure you can relate. And when the income finally did show up, after taxes, after paying student loans, after lifestyle creep, it really didn't feel like there was much left over. And when you feel like you can't get ahead, what do most of us do? You just put your head down and work. You don't feel like you have other options. You just keep going. And that's the trap. Not medicine itself, but feeling that you can't afford to do anything differently. Now, here's what I can tell you from our own experience. When me and Leti started cutting back, when I went to half-time and then to moonlighting, picking up shifts when I wanted to, something changed. Not in the hospital. The hospital was exactly the same. But I would come in, do my shift, and leave. I wasn't getting pulled into the politics, the committee meetings, all the stuff that was weighing on everyone else. When you're choosing to be there, things are different. It was the same with Leti when she cut back to half-time. You do your week of work, and then you're not back for another month. Having that time away really makes a huge difference. You're not grinding through it. You step in, you step out on your own terms. The job didn't change. Our relationship to it did. And that shift only happened because we weren't completely dependent on it anymore. But here's the catch, and this is important. You can't come back unless you have another option. You can't choose to work less if your whole financial life depends on working more. That's not a mindset problem. That's just math. So the real question isn't, how do you fix medicine, or even should you quit? The question is, how do you build enough financial breathing room that medicine actually feels like a choice? So how do you actually break this financial dependency? How do you get to a place where you're not relying on medicine for your next paycheck? I think the answer, and this is what Leti and I did, and what we've seen work for thousands of doctors, is building income outside of medicine. And for us, that was real estate. Now, before you click away, roll your eyes, or whatever you're going to do, we're not talking about you having to do all that day-to-day stuff, getting calls at 2 a.m., or whatever you're thinking you have to do when you own a rental property. There are property managers, there are systems, there are teams. You don't have to run this yourself. You don't have to do the day-to-day. What I'm talking about is building something that generates income, even when you're sleeping, because that's the fundamental difference. Medicine pays you because you show up and do the work. Real estate, done right, can pay you because you own something. Those are not the same game. And most of us, we're only taught to put our heads down and work. Now, I want to be honest with you. This is not passive from day one. Anyone who tells you that is selling you something you don't want. It takes real work up front. You have to learn how to analyze deals. You have to understand financing, and you have to know your market. But over time, with the right strategy and the right team around you, it stops requiring as much of your time and attention. And that's when things start to change. Because once you have income coming in from somewhere other than your clinical work, even a little bit, you start to feel like you have options. That trapped feeling starts to fade. And that's really what we're after here. Just getting to a place where medicine feels like a choice. Now, I want to show you what this actually looks like in practice, because I think sometimes when people hear financial freedom or real estate investing, it sounds abstract, like something that works for other people, but maybe not for someone in your situation. So let me give you some real examples. Larry is a radiation oncologist up in Alaska. He replaced his clinical income in under 3 years. He works half-time now and spends the rest of his time climbing mountains and learning to fly. Jen and Raph are 2 physicians in Maine. 9 months after getting serious about real estate, they had created $120,000 in annual cash flow. Raph was able to cut out weekend call, and Jen ended up leaving family medicine to do what she really loves, running her own Medi-Spa. None of these people quit medicine first. They built options, and then they made choices from a place of strength, rather than feeling like they had no way out. I want to take a second here before I get to what you can do about it for your own situation, because I think this is important. This isn't about getting rich. It's not about retiring early or never working again. For a lot of doctors I've worked with, and for me and Leti, it's about something much simpler than that. It's about time. About 10 years before Leti's mom passed away, we started taking these long trips together. Italy, Japan, all of us together, while she was still healthy. We could do that because we had the flexibility. We had built that into our lives. And those trips, those ordinary days in another country, just being together, that was a real gift. Not something we did occasionally, something we were able to do consistently over a decade before she passed, because we had that optionality. Because when Leti's mom did pass away, we weren't sitting there wishing we had taken that trip. We had taken it multiple times. And our kids had memories with their grandmother that they never would have had if we'd been too locked into work to make it happen. That's what this is really about. Not postponing the life that actually matters to you, because your kids are growing up now. Your parents are getting older now. Your life is happening now, not at some point in the future when work finally calms down. And the thing is, you don't have to know today whether you want to practice medicine forever. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to start building options before you hit a wall someday and need it yesterday. Because when you wait until you're completely burned out, every decision feels urgent. And urgent decisions are rarely your best ones. So if any of this resonated with you, if you saw yourself somewhere in this video, here's where it starts. And if you want to learn how to do this yourself, buy your own properties, take advantage of the tax benefits, build a portfolio while you're still working, that's what we teach. Our program, Zero to Freedom, walks you through the whole thing step by step. And it's built specifically for busy people who don't have a lot of extra time to figure this out from scratch. If you're interested, the link's below. You can also book a free strategy call, and we'll figure out together whether it's a good fit for where you are. Don't wait till you're completely burned out to start building options. The best time to create an off-ramp is before you desperately need one. Your future self will be glad you started now. See you in the next video.